Apologize for the delay. Obviously, we had a council meeting to finish up. With that, I'd like to proceed and call to order the Jobs and Business Development Committee. Perhaps I should say a few words. This meeting is focused on film industry and production in Los Angeles, and it is my fervent hope that we can craft pragmatic solutions to problems. Sometimes we get lost in global issues like business tax reform, and we lose sight of 100 other opportunities to improve things that just take an agreement between two parties or the use of a space that wasn't otherwise used. So I want to do both in this committee, and this will be an ongoing theme. I do expect to have several meetings during the course of the year just focused on filming in Los Angeles. It's a critical core industry to the region, and I absolutely believe that we can cause substantive improvement. And I hope by the end of the meeting you'll all understand what we're talking about. I would also encourage those of you who have other ideas to formulate them. And I had a recent meeting with some industry folks, and it was sort of hard to get a handle on what the specific issues are and what the specific solutions would be. And so I would hope that you don't ignore something because it may be small. Present it to us, and maybe it's something we can fix very quickly, but hone in on what are the core problems that you're facing and how do we solve them. Again, I think at the end of this meeting you will appreciate that there's quite a few things we can do if we set our minds to it, and if you have other ideas, please contact my staff. So with that, I'd like to ask for item number 1.
Item number 1, A through G, is a Chief Legislative Analyst report in response to various motions related to business tax policies, convening a business tax advisory committee, and other matters.
Good afternoon, Councilman. At your last meeting, you made two main requests. One was that we consolidate.
State your name for the record.
John Wickham with the Office of the Chief Legislative Analyst. You requested, one, that all of the business tax motions be consolidated into a single report in council file. And so this report does that. It brings 7 different items that are floating around in various committees together into one document. The recommendations from those various 7 are included in this one item that concerns business tax reform. The second request from the committee was to speak with the Council President's Office concerning their proposal for the reestablishment of Vtac, and to provide the details on what the Council President's proposal is. And we have a recommendation concerning the reestablishment of Vtac. So there are 4 recommendations in our report. We would add a 5th recommendation today at the table. There is a proposal concerning internet businesses and the tax system that we have for them. At a previous meeting, the Office of Finance was instructed to study those businesses and report back with the appropriate tax categories and tax rates for that business class. It was my understanding that was going into a special larger study, but I understand from Office of Finance that they are ready soon to bring that report forward. So rather than wait for the long-term report, they can get back to you hopefully within 30 days. So I would recommend that you include an instruction to the Office of Finance to report back in 30 days on the internet business tax.
Yeah, and at the same time we would want to delete item F, I believe it is, with regard to Vtac. Item F is tax categories for internet-based businesses.
Okay.
If we take that off their agenda, the less for them to do, the more they can focus on the other things.
So recommendation 4F would be removed.
Okay, so we remove that. Can you go through the list of recommendations and explain them?
Yes. Recommendation 1 is to reestablish Vtac. Our office recommends reestablishment based on the old structure for Vtac, which is 19 members. Each council member would appoint 1 member the council president would appoint 2 members, and the mayor would appoint 3 members, giving us a total of 19 appointees. The council president recommended a smaller structure of 9 members, and we have described their proposal here, which would consist of 2 appointed by the mayor, 2 appointed by the council president, 1 appointed by the president pro tem, and then 1 each appointed by the chairs of Jobs Committee, Budget Committee, TCT, Trade, Commerce, and Tourism, and the 4th would be the Housing. So that would give you a total of 9 appointees under the council president's proposal. Item number 2 is an instruction to the Office of Finance to provide staffing support to Vtac. They did this previously, and they have the expertise to advise Vtac on how their programs operate. So they are the main agency who would advise Vtac concerning the gross receipts tax and other elements of the tax program, and then also to instruct the CAO, CLA office, and city attorney to participate in that advisory role. The 3rd recommendation is to authorize the Office of Finance to seek a contractor to prepare a study of the business tax reforms recommended by council. This is a follow-up to the studies that were done in 2003, and they provide the economic context for the reforms that would move forward, and will show how reforms can be implemented in a way that doesn't harm the general fund but allows the return of tax reforms to the taxpayers of businesses in the city. And then the 4th identifies a series of issues that the council had identified specifically concerning small businesses, new businesses, multimedia businesses, targeted zones with revised business tax rules, etc. And so those are the 4 items that are in the report.
Okay, run through the list again. Do you have it?
Of the items that Vtac would review,
Yes.
those items would be additional reductions to the city gross receipts tax, elimination of business taxes on strategic categories, increase the small business exemption eligibility cap. That cap right now is at $100,000, and the idea would be to a small business would be exempt if they earned $150,000 or $200,000 or whatever that number would be.
Yeah.
Increase the new business exemption eligibility cap. So a new business moving into the city of Los Angeles, establishing in the city of LA, would not pay any business tax if they were below $500,000. So the idea is to change that to $750,000, $1 million, or some other number. A multimedia business exemption. The council actually acted on this recently, so this is more of a follow-up and administration, make sure that it's effective instruction. Target zones with revised business tax rules. The concern addressed in the Zion motion on this is that there are zones within the city that are near other jurisdictions, and we are in direct competition with those other jurisdictions. For example, in his district, Calabasas has no business tax, and that's harming the Warner Center, Canoga Park area, where businesses there are facing the business tax. And so if it's a choice of being in a jurisdiction that has no tax or a jurisdiction that has a tax, it's a pretty easy decision for some businesses. So the concern is that there are areas in Sylmar, for example, which is just adjacent to Santa Clarita. A business may relocate to Santa Clarita rather than remain in Sylmar. The same, for just about every district in the city. So the idea is to determine whether zones can be created that would alter the business tax rules in some way to make parts of the city more competitive that are at its disadvantage. And then
The whole city's a target zone.
yeah, I know. So, and that's where some of
Competitive
these-
anywhere.
Yeah. So that was the concept of that motion. And then the last is tax exemptions and incentives for businesses that create high-paying jobs, including film production, hospitality, and healthcare. This again goes to the idea, it's the same concept under B above, eliminate business taxes on strategic categories, really targeting the business tax reforms to ensure that you are creating incentives for businesses that have, create jobs, create good jobs in the city.
And again, we deleted the tax categories for internet-based businesses because we are taking separate action to have the Office of Finance prepare an analysis of those businesses in the city and report back to this committee in 30 days with recommendation concerning tax classification and tax rates. And the life of this committee is 18 months, right?
For the VTAC, yes.
But
that's our
let's be very clear, if we can get a recommendation on any of these items that we feel works, we want to move it as quickly as possible. So we don't want to wait to get a complete report at the end of 18 months and forestall opportunities that might emerge before that. I do have a number of recommendations. The one I've already stated, that's to delete 4F and change the lettering appropriately. 2 would be to instruct Vtac to report back to this committee in 6 months on all proposals so that we can maintain knowledge of what they're doing and also expedite opportunities that might arise in the interim. Number 3, instruct the Office of Finance. I think I've explained that one already, related to the internet-based businesses. And also 4, receive and file council files. We've collapsed all of these files into this report. And finally, approve the recommendations in Council File 1914 as amended. Oh, I'm sorry, we didn't, the main thing, the committee, it's my intention to support Councilmember Garcetti's proposal to comprise the BTAC of 9 members. The last time we had a tremendous learning experience. I don't know that we have to relearn everything, and I think 9 members will accomplish about the same as double the number. We are doing some other things in the course of this meeting. For example, I will be asking each council office to designate an official film production liaison, and so this committee will work directly with council offices on their issues, which has a similar effect. So that person would also be responsible to weigh into the BTAC. We have a number of cards. Let me first explain. Paul Koretz is not a member of this committee, but he, being Mr. Hollywood as he is, he's very interested, obviously, in this issue, and certainly all council members are welcome to committees as long as we don't violate the Brown Act. So he is welcome to, certainly welcome to observe or comment as he wishes. Having said that, do you have any comment?
No, I just had one question because I wasn't around when some of these motions were made on the gross receipts tax. Am I safe in assuming the concerns reflect the fact that you can do a lot of business without making much profit? Because that's a complaint that I've heard over the years, and that in some way it should assess the profitability rather than just the activity.
That has been an ongoing concern. It's the phrase is pass-throughs. And architects, for example, will have a subcontractor who does work for them, and it's work that's passed through, but it winds up looking as profit on your balance sheet. And so you're paying a tax on that pass-through work. In some cases, it's easier to identify what a pass-through is than it is in others. And there have been a lot of people working very hard on the pass-throughs issue, and no one's found a good, elegant way to address the problem. I expect that BTAC will take that up again as an issue that surfaces as a concern. Some of the tax categories are structured in such a way where a business that has a lot of those pass-throughs is at a lower tax rate than other businesses. Some of the service-oriented businesses have been moved down. So that's one way that they might look at doing that kind of thing.
And most of my interest and most of why I'm here today is for the issue of runaway production. And I don't know how well that fits into this process, because I don't think that the city of Los Angeles has as many relevant taxes that that we can deal with as some of the other cities that have given tax breaks, but you have to have the tax in the first place. So I'm hoping we can find some places that we gain here, but I'm not sure how many there may be.
Yeah. I think looking at the tax, the film production tax again might be something worth an effort. So we will do that.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a number of public comment cards. I'd like to ask Michael Banner first. After Michael, Mark Edwards.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm Michael Banner. I'm actually one of the original members of Vtac. And
You survived.
it was actually 5 years, so I'm glad to hear that you're shortening the time that you want to devote to this. Although I am proud of actually what was accomplished there, and I thought we helped move the city in the right direction, but clearly there's more work that can be done. What I would actually suggest this time around, and one of the things that you would focus on, and John just spoke about it, the issues of the pass-throughs, that affects all kinds of businesses, not only businesses in entertainment, and quite frankly, probably more so, people that are in entertainment who tend to do business in limited liability companies and partnerships, which are typically pass-through entities. Something that really needs to take a look at again, and we struggled with it last time, and I think there's still work to be done there. The other thing that I would like to bring to your attention is that, just based on my own organization and the work that we do as a community development finance company, we have pass-through entities that we use to raise money from the financial institutions to do community and economic development. And my working with the Department of Finance to try to get a discussion about the gross receipts tax that we're paying on the pass-through, gone through a lot of iterations, a lot of paper pushing, and no results in terms of trying to reach some conclusion on the matter, one way or the other. Mm-hmm. And I would suggest that you really take a look at it to make sure we tried to create an ombudsman function in the recommendations we had last time, and it doesn't appear to me that is working.
The ombudsman function,
where if you are a taxpayer of the gross receipts tax and you think you have an issue or a dispute that you'd like to try to get some resolution to, and that would probably, you have to provide data to the Department of Finance, and then you sit down and you have a discussion with someone to try to iron out what the dispute is. That's not working from my perspective, and I've heard that from other folks.
John, are these two issues incorporated into the concepts of the directions we're giving to Vtac?
They are not currently, so it could be the action of your committee to add that as an additional item to consider to have pass-throughs be part of the discussion.
Without going through a whole bunch of machinations, is that something that you would recommend? It will take some time to review, so I think it would be one of the longer-term 18-month issues for discussion. So, but I would say that you would want to add that to the discussion. The one thing I don't want to do is weigh the committee down so much we can't get anything done in 18 months. But I'll tell you what, why don't we'll consider that as it moves toward the city council, and if my analysis at the end of the day is that that's something we do want to do, and I'll work with President Garcetti on it as well, then we can amend it in council.
Well, what I would just say in closing is that it's actually not ombudsman, it's in the city's advocate, and ombudsman is a term that's used in federal and state.
Yeah, the taxpayer advocate is what the city has.
It's an existing thing that was done in the first tax reform.
Okay.
It just seems to me that the process and implementation of that is what's broken down. So you're not actually doing anything new. You're trying to see if it actually is being effective.
Okay, well, let me get educated on that issue.
Sure.
And in the interim, we may or may not have an action when this report goes to committee, but in any case, I'll be happy to review it, independent of that.
Maybe the Office of Finance could report on how the taxpayer advocate program is being implemented, and that would give you an opportunity to ask some questions.
Absolutely. Actually, I should meet with them also.
Provide you some data on the cases, and so you can see them track
Okay,
record.
great. We have Mark Edwards.
Good afternoon. Mark Edwards. I'm here on behalf of VICA and on behalf of the Los Angeles Chamber of Commerce. You do have in your file a letter that was sent on September 14th, 2009. I just want to reiterate the two main points of that letter, which is the committee structure and timeline. We're very happy that you're supporting the 18 months, because as I recall, the last Vtac went on forever and ever and ever. I think it was 5 years.
Well, I'm term limited, so I gotta hurry.
Okay, 18 months, sounds good.
Yeah.
And then the criteria for the committee appointments. And we just kind of briefly had an outline in the letter, but the key aspect of it is it's critical to the process to have knowledgeable, professional people who understand tax reform, who understand the issues of small business, medium-sized business, and the film industry. So those are some of the three key groups that should be on the members of Vtac.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we have a pretty good understanding from the previous Vtac, and so I'm not overly concerned with that. I think we're going to put together a good committee.
And just reiterate, we look forward to working with this group. Thank you.
And they will work with you. Thank you very much. Stacy Olip. After Stacy, we have Nicole Shahanian.
I'm here as Senior Vice President of Fandango. We're an internet company in West LA. My name is Stacy Olif. I'm here with Blythe Holden, who's the General Counsel of Shopzilla, another internet company in our building. And I just wanted to support the suggestion that you made, Councilman, about of addressing the concern of the multimedia internet exemption and trying to do that expeditiously, because there's a number of internet companies that, as you know, with business activity being off somewhat, are struggling with the decision of how to control their costs in a kind of a shrinking environment. And one of the big factors, of course, is the cost of doing business in Los Angeles versus nearby jurisdictions which have lower business tax rates. And I, on behalf of Fandango, would like to express our desire to stay in the city of Los Angeles. It's been a good home for us, and most of our employees live in and around Los Angeles, so we'd like to stay close by, but we do have the same concern that many other companies have, that this multimedia exemption that everyone has been relying upon for quite a number of years, and as recently as 2004, both the city attorney and the director of finance appeared to interpret that exemption as covering internet-related businesses without any question. And then more recently, we understand that the tax auditors have begun to take a contrary position and to argue that the multimedia exemption is not broad enough to encompass most internet companies. And that flip-flop is what causes us some concern, because we need the certainty of knowing, as we come up with lease renewals, many of our businesses have most of our customers and clients, et cetera, are not in the city of Los Angeles. So our business could be located anywhere in the region and still do quite fine. So we really would like to emphasize the need for clarification on that particular matter as soon as possible.
Okay, so then I assume you would appreciate the instructions we have to the Office of Finance. I'm sure you're working with them, and they're familiar with the issue, but the idea would be to segregate that from the Vtac and deal with it directly through the Office of Finance, and they'll report back to this committee in 30 days if this action is approved. So
that would be great.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
I said Nicole.
Good afternoon, Nicole Shahanian, Hollywood Chamber of Commerce. I would just like to echo everything Stacy just said. That's exactly the situation that we're facing in Hollywood in terms of leases coming up. One of our biggest employers, or fastest growing employers, LegalZoom, actually just faced this issue last month where they had to renew their lease, and were being solicited by Burbank and other surrounding communities where there is not this tax bracket issue that they have. And we'd like to definitely keep LegalZoom around as long as possible. They're wonderful. There's 300 employees who live, work, and definitely want to stay in LA, and we should be doing everything we can to work with them. So we definitely support your motion.
Okay, I would also ask you to stick around when we have the discussion about locations. I keep hearing about the Hollywood sign and the difficulty of shooting there because of the high cost that the Chamber of Commerce is imposing. And so I do want to hear more about how all of us can do a little better in terms of alleviating the runaway film production issues.
I will stick around.
Sometimes non-politicians speak out of both sides of their mouth too. Okay, but we do want to do something positive about that. We have Blythe Holden. Oh, is this the organization you're talking about, Shopzilla? Or did you mention this? Oh, okay.
She's on behalf of LegalZoom, and
Oh, okay.
I'm Blythe Holden from Shopzilla.
Oh.
And I'm just going to iterate briefly that we also support the CLA's proposal concerning the item related to the multimedia classification and adding on a clarification for internet businesses, which was to remove item 4F from the Vtac.
Actually, that wasn't the CLA's recommendation. That came from the council president and myself. So
Oh, it did?
yeah, we just
I withdraw.
We wanted to
I
get to it
support
quickly.
your expeditious review of that matter.
absolutely.
We faced a lease issue in West LA, and we were last year reclassified from multimedia to professions and occupations, representing a 500% increase in our tax. We've previously been paying around $220,000 a year, and that's jumping it to an assessment of over $1 million a year. We can't afford that, and we think it's out of keeping with the other areas, and also with the intent of the multimedia classification when it was introduced. It was to attract businesses. So I think if we move forward on this, it will continue to be an attractor.
Okay, well, honestly, until Council President Garcetti mentioned this to me today, I knew nothing about it. So in the next 30 days, anticipating the report, Mr. Parks and I will be experts in this field and be able to make a decision that will work for everybody. But thank you very much.
Thank you.
Actually, that's good to put it in priority because the other items will be referred to BTAC. Okay, so I think we have the instructions. If you could reiterate the actions we're taking for Mr. Parks.
For the recommendations are to reestablish the Business Tax Advisory Committee, comprised of 2 members by the council president, 1 member appointed by each council. I'm sorry.
I'll run through it. The proposal is to change the recommendation concerning the establishment of BTAC to be the format recommended by the council president, which is 2 appointed by the council president, 1 appointed by the council president pro tem, 1 each by the chairs of the Jobs Committee, TCT Committee, Housing Committee, and Budget Committee, and 2 by the mayor. So that's 1 change. Recommendations 2 and 3 were approved as is. Recommendation 4 was approved with the removal of item F to advance the internet business discussion quickly. And then you also added recommendations requesting the BTAC report back to the Jobs Committee expeditiously as their work proceeds, so that if they do complete any work that is brought forward for the committee and the council's consideration, and then receive and file the actions that are all of the other motions related to business tax, and then approve 09-1914 as amended.
Which incorporate all those. Council actions.
Yeah.
Okay, with that, can I get a motion on that? Okay, that is moved by Mr. Parks, and I concur. Therefore, that item is approved. We're going to move on to item number 2, which is the informational portion. And I know that our first speaker is Jack Kaiser, so let me bring him up while I get my bearings straight. Okay, Jack, how you doing?
I'm doing fine.
Okay, I found it. Thank you. I should say my staff found it. obviously, everybody in LA knows that filming has a tremendous impact on Los Angeles. Just last night, I was passing by a little community grocery store, and they were filming, I forgot what it was, Sons of Anarchy. And but just to see filming, just growing up in LA, there are many films that I can remember watching in Los Angeles. But we wanted you, Jack, to give us a general statement about the impact of filming in Los Angeles.
Okay, thank you. I'm Jack Kaiser, founding economist of the Kaiser Center for Economic Research at the LAEDC, which basically means I'm old. Anyway, council members, Parks and Corretts, as well as chairman, this is a very important industry, but unfortunately it's a very difficult industry on which to get hard data.
Can people hear, Jack? Raise your hands if you can't hear. Okay, good.
Okay. We're in the process of doing a study on this industry, and we have a sheet that we can leave with you that give you some hard numbers. In 2008, you had 129,000 workers in the industry. You had 5,826 establishments in the county, and these activities paid out in payroll $11.9 billion. So you can see it's a very high-wage industry. This does not include all the people that are independent contractors. This is difficult to get your hands around. There's another 18,000 people out there in the industry that would be independent contractors that have tax codes with the U.S. government. If you're looking at recent trends, they have not been positive. The peak for this industry in terms of employment, and this is strictly production type of activities, this does not include any exhibition, the movie theaters. Anyway, from 2004, which was the peak year, to 2008, we lost 4,750 jobs, and this year it looks like we're going to lose an additional 6,000 jobs in the industry. The trend.
Have you broken that down in terms of general economic problems versus runaway production?
Yes, we have, we have some information here. If you look at the industry, obviously runaway production is a serious issue. You have tax credits being offered by over 40 states. Georgia and Louisiana are now offering 30% on production costs. And then the state of Michigan, which has become very aggressive, they're offering a 25% investment credit on construction of studios and facilities. This is fairly new, and they claim they have 1.3 million square feet of studio space under construction in several locations in Michigan. Besides the runaway production issue, which is becoming controversial, you've had some people say this does not pay for itself. You have literally dueling studies that have been commissioned by various groups, and the people that did the analysis are reputable. But you have some people say it does not pay, and other people say, yes, it does bring a benefit. But you have other issues, and one of the big ones, of course, is the industry. They have seen their business model change rapidly, so there is a focus on cost of both TV and feature film production, and then this gets back to the runaway production issue. They pay very close attention to the cost of doing a production in another state or Canada. We can't forget Canada. If they offer a better economic model, they will go there. And then they have rapidly changing technology. They're running to try to keep up with the latest things in technology. What they're trying to do is prevent the pain that has hit the music industry, and they want to be able to monetize content, but this is turning out to be very difficult for them because it's changing every week. And then, of course, you have labor issues. I know the SAG lady doesn't want me to hit on SAG, but you had the Writers Guild and SAG destabilize the industry, and we have to look ahead a very short time frame. 2011, you have all the major guild contracts expiring, and this focus on digital delivery of content is going to be a very, very significant issue. So this is a key industry for Los Angeles. We can't forget the linkages to other industries, tourism and hospitality, which is the largest industry in the county. That's 456,000 jobs. And then Sunday, we had the Emmys, and a big focus on what the ladies were wearing. And this helps our apparel industry because what it's doing is sending out a message that Los Angeles is a center of entertainment and fashion, so that's important. And the Emmys, a rough estimate, the economic impact there is about $27 to $30 million just for that one event. So this is a key industry. The Academy Awards, the Golden Globes, they all bring in money, but we are under threat from these other states.
One of the most difficult challenges in trying to figure out incentives is we often find ourselves comparing apples to oranges. You mentioned a tax credit on build out of studio space. I don't know that we need to build out more studios here as opposed to something else. So how do we create how do we know that the tax incentives that we might create are going to actually be competitive with some of the things they're offering when they're so totally different? Another one is the business tax itself. Are we competing dollar for dollar, or is in one city it may be totally different from another city that we're competing with? So how do we set the bar? How do we factor those things in? And then, of course, the ultimate issue on the tax is at what point do we start losing revenue greater than the benefits we're deriving from the incentive?
Now, on the facilities, probably we don't need to build anything new, but you have a good chunk of the city of Los Angeles is in an enterprise zone, and there are tax benefits for investing in facilities and hiring people locally, so we probably are on a fairly level playing field there. But on this runaway production, we have done analysis. We did this several years ago for the State Film Commission that showed the impacts of various types of production, and we were able to use actual production budgets from TV shows as well as a varying level of feature films in terms of the production costs. State of California is now offering incentives. We feel that the incentives that the state is offering probably pay for themselves, although it's hard to get that message through to the people in Sacramento who really don't understand the way the industry works. But I think that some of these states, obviously, Michigan has huge budget problems, and they're starting to come under criticism for all the incentives because they've gone a little bit over the top.
A couple more questions from me. First of all, this issue has been around for as long as I've been on the council, dating back to even 1993. But a reporter, just before I came in here, at the tail end of the council meeting, was asking me if there needs to be a cultural shift in how we think about the film industry in Los Angeles. And I said, well, I used the example of the Hollywood Chamber and the Hollywood sign, so I apologize to the Hollywood Chamber for saying that. And I said, absolutely. I mean, if building owners are charging to just be in the background, that's not exactly a business-friendly model for the film industry. If people in local neighborhoods, if our neighborhood councils are not informed about these processes, how are they going to support them when there will be some disruptions in the neighborhoods? And so I know that we've had marketing schemes in the past. I thought EIDC endeavored to create a better filming environment. Can you sort of expand a little bit on the marketing endeavors that we've had to date, and whether or not we do need to get all of LA on the same page with filming in LA?
Yeah, I think we definitely do. Most people approach the film industry as sort of an exotic creature that doesn't impact them. The people in certain areas of South Los Angeles in certain areas of the San Fernando Valley. And what we have to do is do a better job and say, okay, somebody is out doing a location shoot. They may be renting equipment from this company. They may be having props made by that company. The location caterer, they may be buying food from the produce mart. So we've got to do a better job of separating the business of the film industry from the glitz of the film industry. And while things like the Academy Awards and the Emmys are fine, it just sort of covers it up, and we've got to make people understand that this is a hard business. It's just as hard as the aerospace industry or technology, and we've got to approach it, and it impacts almost everybody, whether we think so or not. And so this is going to be a challenge for us to get around this hurdle.
Well, I'd be particularly interested in formulating some marketing strategies to get, as I said, to get all of LA on the same page with regard to the importance of this industry. Secondly, you were around when we created EIDC, and there were some mistakes made, and the model was changed significantly, and now we have Film LA. But some of the authorities that empowered EIDC to do some things, positive things, have been lost in the transition, and it concerns me that that we sort of, in some ways, threw the baby out with the bathwater. Not to open up a can of worms, but is that something we might want to rethink?
Yes, I think we need to look and see how we can make Film LA more effective. And the idea is that Film LA just covers the city of LA, the unincorporated portion of LA County, and some small cities, but we've got to get more people on board. Other cities, there's 87 other cities out there in the county. And so we've got to make an effort to get everybody on board to recognize the importance of this industry. And I think we can make a case of it. But there's some certain things I know, there's been proposals to have utility nodes in certain locations downtown, other popular location sites. I would say that would be something that would help reduce costs, improve crew parking, that type of thing. So anything that we can do that doesn't cost the city money. I know that the city is struggling, but I think there's a lot of things we need to do, and we need to ask people what are some of the small things, like you mentioned earlier. There's probably small things that we can get our hands around.
Okay. So, well, Jack, we may bend your ear on a regular basis. I can think of nobody who's more respected in terms of the economics of Los Angeles. And I've always found you to be very fair in your presentations. So we do want to refocus this committee on the film industry and maximize the opportunities. So I do appreciate you coming before the committee.
My pleasure.
Mr. Parks, did you have any questions for Mr. Kaiser?
I was going to ask you, as you follow this industry over the last several years, I think 4 or 5 years ago, the big issue was down south was given the best deal, and it seemed like it went to New York, and it went to Canada, and where did you say is most recent?
Well, Michigan. Michigan is...
And I'm just wondering whether these temporary fixes where every city is trying to manage the same resource, that it appears that the industry, in my judgment, is viewed you can do films anywhere. I mean, so they're going for the best deal, but it appears that they somewhat are short-lived because they've moved from cities and also outside the country. And I'm just wondering if you go through all of this process, and as Richard mentioned earlier, when do you hit a balance wheel as to you're losing more than you're investing, and then when do you get a sense that the industry has a commitment to your community? Because the next deal, the next movie, you might be in Mexico or New Mexico, and so they're chasing the best deal, and it doesn't appear that these deals keep them in place very long.
No, right now you have this game between the states, and they keep constantly trying to one-up one another. I think that's probably not a good strategy. We do have some incentives, but we have to remember that the base of the industry is here and the key talent is here. And you have the supplier network, which unfortunately is eroding, and you have a lot of really talented people. So there are compelling arguments to produce in LA. produced under the state of California. So, but we don't want to give away the store. Some of these states are definitely giving away the store. We're watching what happens in New York because they actually ran through the money that they had set aside for incentives, and New York State is struggling financially, and they haven't replenished the pot. And then we watch what's going on in Michigan, and they may get pushed back because Michigan is struggling.
The other thing and I think the last time we went through this process and it appeared that, in my judgment, when we went through the tax and evaluated them, the more that we stayed on course to look at the overall business community, we were in better shape than trying to call out or earmark something for a specific industry in the sense of looking for that return. But when we reduced, 100 classifications down to 9, and we eliminated any business making less than 100,000, those seem to be the kinds of things that were more of an incentive than trying to figure out, can you do something special for an individual industry?
Yeah, there's simple things that can be done. One thing that we keep running into is speed in when companies are coming in and applying for a business license, for a building permit, moving things through very, very rapidly, and that goes for the film industry or any other industry out there. So not only speed to market is very, very important, and just business friendly is going to benefit every business in the city and the county.
And I fear it may only be exacerbated by the reality of the early retirement plan. We don't know. In fact, one of the things we need to make sure we strategize on is to ensure that we don't gut our permit review processes, which can negatively impact business.
Yeah, unintended
Mr. Correct?
consequences.
Yeah, I have a couple questions. One is, I think, the ability to get our residents bought in and to make filming easier in LA, I think is a factor in runaway production. I'm wondering, from your experience over the years, have we ever done a good job in marketing to our residents, one, about the economic impacts, that it not only impacts the industry directly and jobs, et cetera, directly, but hotels and restaurants and dry cleaners and 50 different other areas that are affected, and that's part of why our property values are so high, et cetera. The other thing is, have we ever tried to include residents that complain, and I hear probably more than anybody in my district in the 5th, even though I'm very supportive, all the residents tend to complain about what a nuisance it is. Have we ever done anything to include them and make it more of a positive experience, try to get filming locations in neighborhoods, to invite neighbors on the set, to introduce them to some of the actors, to do some of the things that would take advantage of the fact that it can be kind of fun rather than just make it a nuisance?
Yeah,
Have we done any of those things ever, and what do you think of that as an idea?
No, I think it's a wonderful idea. Well, first of all, we don't know ourselves. We're a very complicated but very dynamic area, and it's much different as you go around the city. They all have their own separate concerns, and so we've got to do a better job of selling all the business assets of Los Angeles City to all the residents, and anything that can be done to improve the location filming process. I know at one time there was a code of conduct in the early days of the EIDC, and other things to do, and it can be very, very effective, but we need to tell people, this is Los Angeles, this is what we do it very well, and it's going to benefit you if you help us along.
And how much of an opportunity do we have in terms of incentives? I'm under the impression that in some areas we have lower taxes already, so there's less to incentivize than in some places. Do we still have opportunities where we could provide tax incentives that could entice some of the lost filming back into LA?
I think you can, if you do simple little things, it's a state program, we've got to make sure that the people in Sacramento don't get the film incentive program. That is a major challenge for us. And anything that we can do that's non-monetary, I think, is going to be very, very important. Reach out to this industry and reaffirm that we think they're important because a lot of other states are wooing them, as Paul will tell you. Hello. And, yeah, so it's very, very important. A lot of the solutions could be fairly simple, and so we've got to just get down to work. This is a tough time for the economy. You have a lot of businesses that are scared half to death, and they're afraid of what's going to come out of the state budget mess. They're afraid of what's going to happen to them with health care reform. So many concerns, and we have to remember that a lot of the businesses in the film industry, the supporting businesses, are small.
Well, we are joined at the table by Paul Audley, president of Film LA. I just noticed this was supposed to be a panel, so I apologize. But
Jack did a good job answering questions about my organization, so I'm happy to continue that discussion.
well, it won't be that easy. Actually, the first question is, please explain why this is not all your fault. Maybe I read between the lines, but could you tell us a little bit more about Film LA? And I think most of the people in the audience understand about Film LA, but I want to hone in on some of the I was surprised when I came back to the city council, quite frankly, that your authorities are quite different than the authorities that were given to the Entertainment Industry Development Council. And I'm not sure that we don't want to review that. I don't want to make that a big issue for this meeting, but I do want to suggest that to the extent that things are getting bogged down because we can't get to a decision, that we want to hear your recommendations in that regard, and even if it means expanding your authority. But with that, tell us your perspective on some of the issues we've been discussing here as a group.
Sure. We are a nonprofit. We were created by the city and county and currently represent the city and county, 6 other cities, and 5 school districts in filming. So most of the region is covered by Film LA and its activities. And it is an interesting kind of place to be. You say, explain why it's not your fault, and usually it is, because we have 3 different constituency groups. We call it a tripod that we balance on with our government clients who we serve, with the neighborhoods that we try to protect from negative impacts, and the industry that we try to keep working and available. And keeping those legs balanced is not always an easy task. I do believe that we've been doing a good job of that, and that we provide information resources both to the governments, the media, and civic organizations. And we are available for a larger role as the council might decide to assign us. Film LA in the past, in its past iterations, has been a spokesperson for the city on the industry. It has been an active partner, including things like managing city facilities for filming, which we remain available to do.
Am I right that EIDC had a specific marketing function?
It did do marketing.
And you do not have a do you have a specific
I'll tell you what I think
marketing
has
function?
happened in the transition,
Okay,
Councilman
please do.
Alarcon, is that at the point when things happened that caused EIDC to change to Film LA, there was a withdrawal from the very public spotlight that it had been in. And it was done to regroup, reorganize, focus on the permitting aspects of the organization. And I think it did an excellent job of automating and getting that system under control and developing really smooth ways of doing business that help the industry. And at this time, as the organization has progressed and it has regained its credibility, it is ready and beginning to move in the direction of again being a voice. And in many ways, the media turns to us for information about the health of this industry, which is an indication of what's happening. Our current chair is Pam Fair, who is also on your schedule today and is the National Deputy Executive Director of the organization.
Pam, why don't you join us?
And what I wanted to say was, you talked about marketing, and one of the things that Pam had brought in as a chair is the idea of returning that kind of voice to Film LA as a coordinator with the industry as a whole. And I'm going to let her discuss it because it's her initiative that we're helping to coordinate.
Thank you, Paul. We've been talking about jobs today. You've heard from Jack Kaiser, 6,000 jobs. I think that's probably conservative when we look at union jobs representing the Screen Actors Guild. I know our members are losing jobs to other states and moving, just picking up states and moving. One of the things we found is that The culture has changed. People are less tolerant of our type of business in their neighborhood than just about any other. We found that as we go into neighborhoods, people are either trying to shake down the producers for money, for being in the background somewhere with their home, even being in camera sight. We're finding that the streets can't be closed, but they can be closed for a number of other kinds of special events. Close down the whole city wholesale to do some things, but for our industry, it's not so easy. And we believe that's coming from a lack of tolerance in the neighborhoods, and we understand that we have to be good neighbors and come in and be respectful of people's neighborhoods and their schedules and their sleeping habits. But it's time for us to have a campaign throughout the city to talk about the value of our industry, not necessarily promoting it. I represent actors throughout the country. We have 20 branches throughout the United States, and I'm in many of those offices frequently where there are full-scale campaigns to draw filmmaking to the city. And that's not really what I'm talking about. I'm talking about making the residents who live in the city understand the value of our industry. So maybe they'll be a little bit more tolerant when they see trucks and maybe a lane is closed or maybe there's filming down their street. That they'll see that this is 200, 300, 400 jobs. Behind all the mystery of all those trucks are 300 people who are working, for 10 days, 6 weeks, whatever the time frame is. And those jobs represent a valuable part of our economy. And I guess what we've been talking about at Film LA is to have some sort of campaign, and our employers are the industry. They own outdoor advertising. They own a lot of the advertising outlets. My side of the aisle are the unions, the cast and crews who promote these things. We do these sort of collaborative efforts all the time with Film LA to come up with a strategic campaign that doesn't cost a small fortune, but that promotes that this is a job development part of our city and that these jobs are valuable. We don't contribute our wages just, retail and other areas. Our wages pay taxes. Jack talked about 129,000 workers. We know that we have almost 300,000 union members, entertainment union members. We're one of the largest parts of the LA County Federation of Labor because of our numbers. Our members are contributing their wages on a daily basis. Now, when they leave town, and we have a lot of our members who do leave to go to Michigan or these other areas, wherever the boom is, that's where they go because that's where they're hired and they're traveled to. Their wages are spent in those cities. They literally take their families with them, enroll them in schools, and stay for 6 months or a year, and sometimes they leave. The other thing that we've talked about, and we've explored this a little bit with council members individually, we have very concentrated areas of our members, union members who live in certain parts of the city, and other industry workers. It's not just union members, people who work throughout the industry. In certain parts of the city, highly concentrated. The West San Fernando Valley, the Southwest San Fernando Valley, the North Valley, and in areas of the county, in the Ventura Boulevard corridor, Hollywood, but you see especially areas where it's almost everyone in the neighborhood. The exception is someone who's not in the industry. And when we looked at statistics, those areas didn't have a large amount of filmmaking. It was other areas where downtown and some other areas where there aren't as many industry residents, or weren't that many residents at all for a while. So we worked with Dennis Zine in his field office a little bit. And as filming started to transition more into the West San Fernando Valley, people were more tolerant because there are people in our industry who make a lot of noise, but the rank and file workers had very little trouble with it. The same is true in Santa Clarita, in Sylmar, San Fernando, Granada Hills, those whole areas. That people are very open to it, and they understand that they mean jobs. So one of the areas is to look where filming is more welcome, and the studios won't run into as much so many challenges. You'll hear later from people from the industry who can tell you about the challenges that they face when they go out into the city to film. And I think that's something we have to take a long, hard look at. When you can film efficiently in the midday in the middle of Manhattan, and you can be more efficient filming than you can in, Hollywood. There's the problem that we have to address.
I hope that got through the concept of the marketing where we're heading. The other part of a place that we're heading at Film LA in marketing really has more to do with the city and its facilities, and that we have are completely overhauling a locations library, which there's a sample of here that I'll just give to the clerk. It's designed to provide access to the industry to more locations, to spread them around the city, and to get them out where people need to be and can be. And this was one of the points we had sort of touched on, which was access to city facilities that may currently be unused for filming, make it an easy place to work. And it's one of the places that we could expand our role with the city. In the past, Film LA actually did manage some facilities for the city, and we're able to actually bring improvements to them that were closed. This site is that we're showing you is called Loco Scout, and it'll act very much like you've seen some real estate sites where a film company can go in and say, we already know we're going to be at this address. Within 10 miles, is there a school? Is there a parking lot? Is there a ball field? Is there a city facility? Is there a library where we can film? And this will let them do that with some very detailed photographs with real core information, whether the building's scheduled or not, whose districts they're in, and all kinds of information. And then they can then download this information about the city facilities and translate that back to their directors or location scouts and others to help them work in the city facilities. We think this is going to be a good benefit. It's been designed with the assistance of location scouts and managers, and so it's another place that we think helps to market the city and its desire to have filming.
Okay, now, we are going to be going through contract negotiations tomorrow
Could be.
with the CAO. Mr. Rano, if you could step forward, I just want to understand this a little bit better. Are the marketing concepts that you're speaking of incorporated into the negotiation process?
We haven't begun any negotiations, but part of what we have in the contract language includes helping to market the city.
Okay. Can you expound on that?
David Hirano with the Office of the CAO. This week we plan on sitting down with Film LA and going over their response to the RFP and the areas where there may
So we've already had an RFP?
Yes.
Oh, I apologize. How many respondents were there?
There was just one.
Just one, okay. Okay, lucky we got that one.
It's very simple.
Okay, but the bottom line is that we can make it whatever we want to make it, even at this point.
We have more freedom with just one respondent.
Exactly. So we can add and embellish it or whatever. Here's my concern, David, just to state it out front. I would like to dig deeper into the function of Film LA, and I would hate to contract with them without taking advantage of other opportunities that might present themselves, particularly in the area of marketing, and also this whole issue of stewardship. I mean, I really think Film LA ought to be, the ambassador for the film industry on both sides of the coin, from the city of LA to the industry to the city of LA, and I'm not sure that the RFP captures those concepts. I would also like to look at some of the authorities in EIDC and see if we want to rethink some of those. But frankly, just taking over the chairmanship of this committee, I haven't had time to really delve into that. I'd like to work with you as quickly as possible to get to some of those things. And of course, we don't want to upset the apple cart so that we have to restart and do a whole new RFP in the context of the existing RFP. So,
well, we will review your request and work with the city attorney and make sure that what we do is within the constraints of the RFP.
Staying on task.
Correct.
Yeah.
And if you so desire, we could potentially even go out with another RFP or open up another, just on the marketing piece, if that's what you want to do.
You might get two applicants.
Well, let me work with the city attorney to make sure.
I want to say it very clear. I don't want to go to a new RFP.
Okay.
I want to work with the existing RFP, but I want to I mean, it's not a contract till the ink is dry, and I want to make sure that we have the opportunity to
I hear you.
work with the contract. So maybe we can set up a meeting very quickly with me, the CAO, and the city attorney
Absolutely.
to
We can do this
sort of
quickly as you
explore
like.
this idea.
Yeah.
Because I was just going to say, we've gone through this process where we've split the RFP and then we've come back.
Put it back, yes.
If I'm not mistaken, the last time out, only one company really applied.
This RFP was our first RFP in this process.
I know, but we did something well in advance as we were trying to split it at one
Oh.
time and.
We did an RFI at your
Yeah,
direction, sir, and
RFI.
we got approximately 15 responses from companies that said they would be interested in
So
bidding.
how many people bid on the RFP?
Just one.
Okay, so if we had the ability to stay within the RFP and redesign the marketing piece, we would not be violating anybody's rights who didn't apply.
Well,
We wouldn't, I mean, so it doesn't appear we have got an RFP if there's only one person that applied and we want to give them more task or ask them to redesign the task that they applied for.
I would like to work with my colleagues in the city trying to make sure that you're
But see, I can
correct and
understand
that we
if we
do,
gave different rules.
we do this correctly, sir, but.
You know, once
we-
they got the job, and there were other people that applied that we cut out of it, but no one else applied.
But marketing wasn't a heavy emphasis in the RFP. So, you know, I just want to make sure that we work appropriately with our friends in the city attorney to make sure we do
I
this
just would not
right.
like you to come back and say another RFP again.
Yeah.
Well, I got you. I
Yeah,
hear you. and-
I understand that as
Yes,
well, Mr.
understood.
Parks. I want to, I don't want to go through a bureaucratic process if we
No.
can avoid it, but
Thank you.
that's why I want to sit down with the city attorney and the CAO and see if we can hammer something out. And the CLA.
John's exploding in the corner.
He's not, no, he's not quite exploding, but we had the same thought at the same exact time. Maybe not the exact time, but, so why don't we just table that discussion, and we're going to move forward with that. I'm just concerned that we could get ahead of ourselves with the existing RFP and lose opportunities to fix some problems in the short term.
Okay, and we'll work with you to set up a meeting as quickly as you like.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Well, I think that sort of sets the tone. You know, this committee wants to work with Film LA and expand on opportunities to the challenges that are presented by runaway production. What do you see as some of the fundamental problems?
Well, I think some of the things that we were able to help contribute to the report that came before you from the CLA's office that I think is nicknamed, if not actually named, the Ugly Betty Report. It's not its real name, right? I had gone through...
I thought it was. I didn't know.
Everybody calls it that. I had gone through all the studios, most of the unions and guilds and others last winter, and was able to feed in and find that really we were affirming the findings there as well, that some of the key issues certainly were the incentives, and while California has one and everyone's grateful for it, it is certainly not broad enough or big enough to be a true attraction. As an example, with people talk currently about Deal or No Deal leaving for Connecticut, it was not eligible as a game show for this incentive. And so that's the key big one that I think we should all keep our eye on, is being truly competitive with the other states. And many of those states have invested in the technology and the pre and post production and the studios and the craft of filming, and will remain in this competition even as others fall away because they aren't finding the benefit from this incentive. But more locally, some of the issues that came up included the lack of real enforcement. We have enjoyed a huge change in that with the creation of a unit at LAPD, which works with us very closely. We've established an excellent working relationship. They are reviewing every permit. They are available to us to assist
I know Jim has to leave very quickly through the benefits of high technology and text messaging. But one of the recommendations that I wanted to make out of this committee is to actually direct the CLA and the CAO with the city attorney to draft an ordinance whereby LAPD can legally enforce properly permitted shoots, including making it illegal to disrupt a properly permitted shoot. At this point, Film LA doesn't have any authority to do that.
Well, we never had it, but the LAPD doesn't have any authority to do that either.
Exactly. So it's very difficult to deal with disruptive occurrences, and so so this recommendation would go forward, if approved by this committee, would go forward to the City Council, and upon approval, the city attorney would develop the ordinance. Secondly, I would like for you didn't mention this, but one of the issues that I know is very difficult. We have a lot of vacant properties in the City of Los Angeles portfolio, and yet it's very difficult to manage film shoots with the General Services Department, which isn't their function. I mean, they're not there. They just manage the vacant, the vacant building. They just know it's there. Maybe they water it. Maybe they water the plants on Mondays and Thursdays only, of course. Maybe they barbed wire a facility. So they really they're not really specific. Their management of it is not specific to filming. So I know that if under this contract we could empower the contractor to actually manage the facility while a shoot is going on, under whatever provisions, that it might help us. I see David is ready to get out his pen and write, because it's going to be your job. But it would greatly enhance our opportunities to conduct better operations on the shoot. So I would like to direct the CLA and CAO to work with Film LA to develop a process whereby Film LA might manage these vacant city structures. I'm sure we could come up with some kind of cooperative agreement, and if you could return back to us, David, how long do you think would be an appropriate time frame?
I really have no idea on that. You can back to us.
Yeah, hold on. Okay, I'm violating the laws right now, so apologize for that. These are actually recommendations that will be connected to item number 3, just a technical issue. I will be making these as part of item number 3, but I'm discussing them here. So maybe you could come up with a time frame to get a report back when we get to item number 3. Jim, I know you have to leave, so why don't we go ahead and let you make a quick presentation.
Thank you.
Your topic is TV production impediments to shooting in L.A.
Correct. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Jim Sharp. I'm the Executive Vice President of 20th Century Fox Television. I supervise the physical production side of the business, with approximately 15 to up to 45 television shows produced by our company and aired on various networks and cable channels, including 24, Bones, How I Met Your Mother, Glee, and as you spoke of before, Sons of Anarchy, which is shot out in your district near it. I'm pleased to be here today knowing that the topic is jobs and economic development. It's important to note that Los Angeles has the most skilled and talented workforce. The labor force is second to none, the best studio equipment, the best support resource companies in the industry. Given your agenda, jobs and economic development, I'd like to discuss a few ways that the City of Los Angeles may want to consider to maintain a more productive business climate. I'm not here today to talk about the competitive nature of the production business. You are well aware of financial pressures that our company is under, the tax incentives offered in other states and countries, and the changing dynamics for the television model. I do, however, want to let you know about the operational hurdles and impediments we experience when producing shows here in LA. Generally speaking, all businesses are allowed to operate 24 hours, 7 days a week. It seems unfair that the motion picture and television business I'd like to ask your help to find creative solutions to these problems so that Los Angeles can retain these important jobs, which are so important to our economic development. I'll start with downtown. It's great that downtown is becoming a vibrant center, and we're encouraging people to engage in entertainment and dining activities. If people are choosing to live downtown in lofts and condos and apartments, however, it's a big concern that the only economic activity that is subject to regulation is the film and television production. Specifically, the current hours for filming, 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. They're way too restrictive for an industrial and commercial area. If companies need to film outside of those hours, we're required to get signatures of the affected parties, the businesses and the residents. If we offer compensation to them, we will get their signatures most of the time, but it's not feasible for us to continue to do this all the time. I'd like to share two quick examples. The first is an operational problem we are experiencing with our show 24, which you may be familiar with respect to nighttime shooting limits. The story this season takes place in New York. We all know that LA for New York locations are found here in downtown LA. On a practical level, one half of the season must be filmed at night. The episodes that take place from 8 p.m. to 6 in the morning must be filmed at night. The show takes 10 months to produce. Obviously, with the nighttime provisions of 7 to 10 p.m., obviously it becomes increasingly difficult to produce these 10 episodes when 7 to 10 p.m. restrictions are in place. This is crippling operationally. It's a huge problem for us. I know that there are some guidelines that are under consideration, but I don't think those guidelines in their current form will make the situation any easier. And going forward, we're faced with trying to avoid filming in downtown altogether. Which brings me to the second example, which unfortunately is an example of job loss and lost revenue for the city of Los Angeles. We produced a drama pilot. The only drama pilot we produced in Los Angeles last season was for ABC, and it takes place in a Los Angeles law firm. We use the 50th and 51st floor of the City National Plaza Arco Tower building that people use all the time. Our studios decided to take that show to Dallas, and we're shooting Dallas, Texas, and doubling it for Los Angeles. Shooting feature films outside of LA it's gone, the business is gone, and now LA, in Los Angeles, the trend is that we're seeing the same thing happening in television. This show, starts shooting next Tuesday. Parking's an issue. We know that neighborhoods get weary of the trucks and the cars associated with filming, but if the city could help us identify unused vacant property, we might be able to park cars remotely and shuttle people and crew to locations to ease mayor's office, whoever. While we appreciate that you've made filming at many of the city properties free, many private property owners see film production companies scouting a location and look for the opportunity for a windfall for them. It's found money. Our location budgets are really challenged, and we're at the break point where we can't continue to pay $10,000 a day for a parking lot. The buildings are even much higher costs. We would greatly appreciate your help in finding a way to incentivize private property owners to charge reasonable rates for filming. In addition, we could use your help to identify and incentivize new locations for filming. As I mentioned, we shoot Sons of Anarchy in the Sunland, Tujunga, Pacoima, and North Hollywood areas, and we're having a great experience. We're bringing money into their local economy. Typically, we shoot 2 days an episode. It's $14,000 on average each day. That's $28,000 an episode. We just completed last night, was our last day of season 2. So thanks for going by. Those residents and business owners they're so happy they just can't. They don't get that kind of activity. Anyway, and finally, I think we need leaders like you who will use their bully pulpit to talk about the importance of film and television production in Los Angeles, the good jobs it creates, the economic impact it can have, which helps to keep the restaurants and butchers and gas stations, dry cleaners and car dealers in business. I'd like to encourage you to talk about it at community events, neighborhood council meetings, and everywhere you go, so that the people understand the importance and significance of working together to keep these shows in Los Angeles. I think we can go a long way to educate the public that these occasional inconveniences provide thousands of jobs and contribute to the economic well-being of our city. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to answer any question you have.
No, thank you very much. Yeah, we want to work with you actually on the specifics of the issues, and I hope that I know you have to run, but we'll get you a copy of the recommendations that we're going to be making, and I think you'll see that we're trying to create an action-oriented agenda. There's some small things that we can do immediately, and I want to do them. So hopefully we can get you that report by email tomorrow.
Thank
Okay,
you.
my staff will be happy to get that to you.
Meeting, we're hoping to bring it back again next year. So
Great. That'll be one of our goals then.
It's one of our big objectives.
I'd just like to comment, and this comes up quite a bit in the community that I represent, and I understand the issue of marketing and making people aware of the dollar that are coming in the community, and also that they are aware of the economic benefit. I think what we run into is that the people that don't get the economic benefit, they're not the business people and such. The other thing that comes up when we talk about the inconvenience is that they see this movie activity come to the community and it leaves, and they see nothing left. They don't see any legacy. They see nothing that was the cause of. Maybe people made money, maybe people had a good experience, but we had mentioned well before you came on board, it's one of the things with Film LA that we need to talk to the business community and the film community, and it's not a situation to where you're asking people to build monuments, but I think when you take over a community for several weeks or whatever, that the community, you'd at least have something to point at and say, in this community we left A, or we left B, or we painted the community, something to where people look at it and say they see a overall benefit for the community, as opposed to it just was converged on, people were inconvenienced, they couldn't get to their homes, and there was a handful of people that benefited and most of them left. And so that's something I think that in order to turn that corner, there's got to be some consideration of what is left there that the community can see, that maybe they didn't benefit from the financial, maybe they were inconvenienced, but they see something that's a living legacy that says this, basically the community in general benefited from it.
Thank you for the question. It's a pleasure to talk to you. We have Gretchen Losky as our government affairs person, and often I speak to her often, and I've said to her, I'm happy to have these conversations with anybody. If in these districts, and I'm not sure how they all break down in neighborhood communities, we only knew that park benches or trees or graffiti removal or whatever these issues were for them in their local areas, we'd be happy to contribute.
I'll give you an example, and this is not something to say you should, follow suit. I'll give you an example. There's in the 9th district, right across from my district, there's a Boys and Girls Club. It's been there for decades. Challengers Boys and Girls Club. Now they have, over the last 20-some years, almost taken over a whole block. The one thing that people remember most about their history is in '84, the Olympics came, and as part of the Olympics, they got a brand new gym floor. And that is the thing that people come in with pride and say, we used to play, it was an old grocery store that they played on linoleum. And all of a sudden, this event occurred, the community was converged on, and they are able to have 3,000 kids there a week. And this is the legacy from an event. And that's the kind of thing that people are saying, that they're not asking, for a great deal, but I think we have to separate those who are those $14,000 a day people that are getting those benefits. The larger group of the community is not part of that. And they need something to say, something occurred here and something was left here and it was a positive.
Yeah, one of the functions of Film LA might be to sort of coordinate that, so that Fox isn't bearing the burden for a particular TV show at one location. That location may be a very popular site. You can coordinate it with the other production companies and come up with a better benefit to the community. I think that's something that we need to look to Film LA to do. I would hate to see every single production company negotiating community benefits agreements with the local community. That's all you would do. But we might be able to create a function like that in the context of Film LA. And again, as I mentioned, one of the recommendations we're going to make is that each council office have a designated representative. That person will work in concert with Film LA on that notion. That's a good idea, even if it's just removing graffiti that's in a shoot at the end of the production. Although you might take away the location, but
we fly people in to actually do that.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's a very good point, and one that actually Paul Otley, I do know Paul well, and before him, Steve McDonald, things that we've talked about, those specific things often.
Great.
And yet we have not been able to, really get anywhere with it.
Councilmember, the tradition seemed to exist more when there was long-term impact from feature films, which, as you know, are virtually gone from Los Angeles. And they have put in field lights for high schools and done major work in renovation. And even now, we've done some work at Lincoln Heights Jail, which is closed, where they rewired floors and redid the elevator. But it was features that tend to have it. The coordination on other sites is something that we could try to do by working with the studios. But I really believe that these one-shots, where they're in for a day or two, it's going to be harder to get. But they have
we
to.
agree, but I think the issue is, I don't think, just like we had, and I think we talked to you last year in Leimert Park, and everybody was supportive of bringing this filming opportunity to Leimert Park, but we'd all forgotten about the 20 business people that make a living there. And they have some say about whether their businesses are disrupted. We lost that opportunity, but no one thought about, and they have some very specific rules about closing down Degnan and 43rd Street. And because we violated that, we lost this film site shoot, and then we had the business community up in arms thinking that they were going to lose access to business for 5 days while this was going on. So those are some of our nuances that we deal with.
Yeah. Well, with that, let's move on to Ed Duffy. Oh, sure. I'm sorry.
You talked about one of your productions moving to Dallas. I was just curious what was behind that decision to move. Were there any factors that we could learn from here?
Well, the ease of operation, is what I'm talking about, operation problems. Because there's no issue about being competitive. On a financial basis, we're not competitive here. So it's all about operation. And the ease of operation is, like night and day. So we're taking that show there, and we start shooting next week. We built our sets already, and we're one of the studios that fought very hard and has, if you look at our history, has had more production in Los Angeles than anybody else in television. But we are seeing this shift last year and now this year, looking toward being able to operate. And it's very difficult to operate here in the city.
Well, what are some of the specifics when you talk about ease of operation? Where are we doing wrong?
Typically, if you shoot night scenes, and you can't shoot at night scenes, and you have to rely on getting signatures from everybody in this town, downtown, it's impossible. So you're just waiting for the opportunity of somebody to keep paying more and more and more every time you get a signature, and when people say no, you're done. We can't put those kinds of productions in jeopardy of not being able to film. And we're now looking at a different business. It's just tough to operate. Sons of Anarchy can operate easily out in the north end of the valley. They're having a really good experience. In Sunland, Tujunga, Pacoima, North Hollywood. The flip side of that is we have a show like 24, that example, or this one, which is a downtown Los Angeles law firm, high-end law firm, in a building. We're just setting ourselves up for a problem. And I can't recommend to the people that I work for that we put ourselves at risk.
Thank you.
Okay, I wanted to move on to Ed Duffy, representing location managers, Teamsters Local 300.
399, but that's okay.
399, I'm sorry. Location.
That's what it's all about. Anyway, I'm going to read this briefly, and then I will get into what you did ask me to do. My name is Ed Duffy. I'm a business agent with Teamster Local 399 and represent the location manager, drivers, and casting directors, among others, who work in the entertainment business here in Los Angeles. Prior to that, I was a location manager for almost 30 years, working in television and features here in L.A. As you're well aware, due to tax incentives and other perks being offered by other states and countries, the motion picture television commercial business has been eroding rapidly here in Southern California. Currently, approximately 35% of our members usually working this time of year are unemployed, and the prospects of that changing seem slim. As an example, Fox Television, one of our biggest employers, made the decision not to film their new one-hour dramas in Los Angeles because of exorbitant costs and difficulties of filming in LA, especially in the downtown area, an area vital to keeping filming in LA. In the last 2 years, the cost of filming one day downtown from a location perspective alone has risen from $30,000 a day to at least $60,000 to $80,000 a day and more. It becomes cheaper due to incentives and more cooperation to shoot in New York, Boston, or Chicago than to shoot in the film capital of the world, Los Angeles. Whereas in the past we always had episodic television to keep everyone working when the features left us, that has now changed. The CW network, for instance, has taken 2 of their new series to Atlanta, where they can work more cheaply than here. I could go on and point out the losses we're experiencing and the hardship our members as well as the other unions are experiencing, but I won't, because the bottom line is we need solutions to the problems, and that's not an easy fix. The state has provided a window of opportunity with tax incentives that will bring back a number of the smaller features that might have shot elsewhere. A film task force has been put together by the city to discuss, study, and propose incentives that they might be able to offer, as well as identifying any issues that the film industry and city agencies might be able to change to make filming easier and more efficient. But to be honest, we need to do something today and not months from now. At the meeting we had at the beginning of September, I was asked to supply you with, you asked me to supply you with 10 important location issues or locations that confront us today and try to work towards solutions. I tried to be specific, but some issues are more citywide. Those 10 things I came up with one was the Observatory, which is an iconic filming location in Los Angeles. The cost and availability of this makes this iconic landmark of LA prohibitive to filming in 90% of the cases. The Hollywood sign, we understand the brand needs to be protected, but the cost of $10,000, which in many cases that's what it ultimately is not realistic. Costs in downtown Los Angeles. Obviously, that's probably our biggest situation right now because everybody needs to film at some point downtown because it's the only city we have. Parking, locations, restrictions, payouts for signatures. Guidelines for downtown should be for all of downtown, which there's an issue pending about that we can get into, and we should realize that it's a commercially zoned area. Venues are allowed to operate as such, and the motion picture TV commercial business is not. The LA Zoo, which I know might be discussed today, is not available even though they say they are. Nobody, if you ask someone who shot inside the zoo, you'll find out that nobody shot there for years. Parks and Rec. Griffith Park has always been something we've fallen back on. For some reason, lately, we've had problems with an exorbitant amount of new monitors and issues. There's no filming on weekends, which I think should be not necessarily across the board. We should have some sort of flexibility there. If there's an area in the park somewhere that isn't being used by people, we should be able to film there. And there's also seems to be a very poor attitude that we've been experiencing, and I can't explain why. I don't know why that's been happening. City buildings. We should have a published directory of city buildings and things that are available and that are willing to be used for filming and contacts, and make sure those contacts are aware they are the contacts for filming and are asked to make every effort to accommodate film companies when possible. There's one that I threw in here because some of my location managers kept saying this to me over and over again. The Los Angeles Fire Department, we do walkthroughs for permits when we shoot at schools, churches, and hospitals. We also have to do walkthroughs when we want to park in a church lot that is empty at the time and close to the public. We still have to do a walkthrough. Waste. I mean, the place is closed. It's a parking lot. DOT lane closures. For filming purposes are a nightmare. Decisions change daily about where or when we can have them, and we do not get word on approval till the very last minute, which brings havoc to production. This is a this is an area that's critical, and we've talked about it. It's been talked about at task force, and we still haven't done anything about it. That's something that I'm very concerned with. DOT posting, that's an issue that I think a lot of people in the city have. A lot of the communities have issues with posting and how it's put up. These are simple things, but they're important. In a lot of other cities around us, like Pasadena and Santa Monica, the location managers or the production company post their own signs, making sure they're specifically posted correctly. Then the team from DOT goes out and checks them. It wouldn't, one of the concerns was, I think, for DOT was that might be taking jobs away from them. It really doesn't, because they still have to be checked. They still have to be looked at. And the physical part of putting them up takes a lot of time. And because they're so spread so thin, it's definitely something that would be better left to people that really are very concerned about it and want to make sure there's enough signage so people are not upset when they park somewhere in the middle of the night and then find out that their car isn't there in the morning, or that they're woken to try and move it. And this is one that I think, for some reason, and I don't understand why this has happened, but city agencies should encourage filming from the top on down and not be so negative or unresponsive when they're approached. There should be, at the very least, be something sent to every decision maker encouraging them to support filming at their location, even if they can't do it, but at least feel like they're supportive. It's amazing how many people, you try to call somebody in a park somewhere, they don't return your call, they're never available. If somebody needs to tell us no, I mean, that's not a problem. I mean, we can hear a no, but when there's no response at all, it's a big problem for us, and we should be held accountable to that. I don't know when it happened. It's been evolving over the years, but our city and residents have been pushing the studios and film production companies away, and due to incentives, they now have no reason to stay, and who does it hurt? Not the companies. They can go elsewhere, but the workers trying to make a living in the industry, as well as the restaurants, retailers, dry cleaners, and others that they support. I realize the city has very little resources to be able to offer monetary incentives like the incentives that have been offered in New York City or Shreveport, Louisiana. But from my perspective, Los Angeles has always been the film capital of the world, and we're not acting like it. Filming is vital to all of us, from the 250,000 entertainment workers in LA to tourism and all that it supports. Thank you for the willingness to listen, and I hope that with all our help we can try and bring the jobs and industry back to where it belongs. We can't wait one more minute longer.
Well, I can't.
I know. Well, a minute.
It'd take less than a minute, but I do want to say that we will be looking at each of these 10 items and trying to develop strategies for some movement forward. I don't know which ones we'll hit, but if we get one, it's better than what we've got now. I mean, it seems to me that the mayor would be willing to send a letter, an executive order perhaps, to all city agencies to encourage top-down support of filming. It's a simple notion. We might make that recommendation to the mayor's office. I certainly could send a letter like that, but it's better if it comes from the mayor. And then the other thing is inviting people to come before this committee that have impact on these particular things. Certainly the Griffith Park Observatory, the LA Zoo, Rec and Parks in general, and there's a number of recommendations that we are going to be making that will have some action on some of these items, but we do intend to focus on all 10 of these items. I think there's general concurrence with all the items that were made, so we don't have to go through a lot of reiteration. I'd like to ask David Phelps. Is David here?
Yeah, he is.
Oh, there he is. Okay.
Mr. Parks, just so you know, we don't tell anybody, but we make the sets for the LA Zoo and no one charges them.
Oh, that's very good. Thank you.
What was that?
Makes the sets.
We make sets for the LA Zoo. For example, we're meeting with them now about the Christmas theme or the Thanksgiving.
Oh, okay.
We make their sets for them and we don't charge them.
But you can't film there?
No.
No, my kids like it.
Makes good sense.
David.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Chairman, members of the committee, Councilmember Koretz. My name is David Phelps. I'm the Director of Government Relations for the Association of Independent Commercial Producers. We are a trade association that represents 275 approximately commercial production companies and the executive producers that operate them, as well as over 250 members who are suppliers and vendors for our industry. We are what you would consider the working class of the production community. We work on tighter timelines than most other productions do. Oftentimes, our production company members receive as little as 72 hours notice to put together a production, identify a location, and turn that around. The trends in our industry are cost-driven. Increasingly, advertising budgets are being shrunk, which result in smaller budgets for productions to take place. So monetary considerations are increasingly playing a factor in where productions choose to shoot, especially for commercial production. We leave a smaller footprint than most productions, whereas a television production might include anywhere from 15 to 25 vehicles for a specific shoot. Commercial productions tend to include a much smaller footprint, but we do have a higher frequency of shoots throughout the city. The single highest driver that affects commercial production is the accessibility of on-location shoot locations. We depend more than any other segment of the industry on the availability of on-location shoots. 72% of our shoot days in 2007 were conducted on location, which is a figure that has remained generally constant for the last few years. I was asked in my presentation to provide some of the examples of other cities that are offering state incentives, specifically toward commercial production. And I know that as of this week, approximately 3 jurisdictions within California do offer incentives to production. San Francisco does offer a specific film incentive, but it does not include spot filming. The city of Santa Clarita in April of this year did eliminate its permit fees for commercial production companies who film more than 6 times a year in their jurisdiction, and refunds 50% of their transit occupancy tax for stays of 5 nights or longer in a calendar month. That is a very new incentive that's being offered, so there aren't any statistics on its success yet. Also in July of this year, the city of San Diego established a pilot tax rebate program for commercials with a budget of at least, for commercials and television productions, with a budget of at least $25,000 that shoot 75% locally and hire 50% local crews, up to $2,000 in rebates for police fees, ranger fees, posting for no parking fees, and fire fees. The city will also provide a free production assistant, a student filmmaker or film intern who has gone through certain training programs. San Diego has no permit fees and free public properties, which include streets, beaches, parks, sidewalks, etc. So they are very aggressive in their outreach and incentives to the production community. Those were the examples I could find of specific municipal incentive programs. One of the things that we are hoping to see the Vtac and the committee look at are specifically changes that can be made to the entertainment production cap for the city of Los Angeles. We feel because of the cost drivers that are occurring in our advertising agencies are asking companies to produce spots on a lower and smaller budgets, but the costs are still going up, that we would like to see the possibility of the minimum threshold for the tax to be reassessed from the current 2.5 million minimum, looking at raising that so that it more appropriately includes the small and medium-sized companies that the commercial production industry include. We are in favor of the expedition of the report that came from Council President Garcetti that was passed by the City Council earlier this year, that will establish utility nodes in areas with high volumes of filming activity. We hope that can be expedited as quickly as possible, as well as the on-site listing of public and private facilities that are available for film production use. I think I'll stop there and take any questions or...
Thank you. We're getting a lot of information. I really want to move to item number 3, and I would ask if you have the time, please stay, because we do have 15 recommendations relative to item number 3 that I would like to get in. So can we have the CLA give us a quick rundown of the infamous Ugly Betty report?
Item number 3 is a CLA report relative to runaway production in the entertainment industry.
Oh, by the way, before John speaks, I do want to mention that we have written testimony from John Kaczynski, Director of Government Affairs and Public Policy for the Writers Guild of America, with a number of recommendations that we will analyze and hopefully act upon, or certainly give us some direction. Yeah.
John Wickham with the CLA's office. The report was titled Ugly Betty and Runaway Production because we didn't want to just call it the Ugly Betty report. So it does concern the runaway production component as well. And in listening to the testimony, there were a couple things that came up that I think would be relevant for your information as well. I need to go back and verify, but the special events ordinance that was passed by council included the enforcement of city special events as something that the LAPD would have an opportunity or a responsibility to do. So filming activities are within that special events umbrella. So that's an opportunity to use the ordinance to enforce the film permit.
Okay.
We need to do some research to make sure that determine how that would be implemented.
We were going to, that was one of the recommendations, so I'll tell you what, why don't
that may be done.
We'll go ahead and make the recommendation, and once we figure that out, we'll pull it out if necessary.
Exactly.
But we may need to crystallize it in any case, okay? Exactly. So that everybody's real clear.
Exactly. Okay. The second thing the special events ordinance did was streamline the street closure process, and that will be a benefit to the film industry as well. So that's one thing there. The other thing that's
If I'd known these things, I would have voted for the thing. But
the other is that the city planning department is doing a historical resources survey of the entire city. They're looking at all of the properties in the city and going property by property to determine characteristics that could be used for, historic resources surveys, that type of thing. That is data that can be drawn out and used in the location manager efforts to identify new communities, new areas where filming can go. So it may be used committee in the future to have a report from the planning department on how their work is proceeding, what kind of data they're generating, and how that could be useful for the film industry. To the Ugly Betty report, there were 7 recommendations that council approved.
Here's what I want to do, okay, because it's getting late. Give me the one recommendation at a time, and then I have recommendations for additional action by the committee to embellish the report.
Absolutely.
So why don't you give us recommendation number 1?
Number 1, for the mayor's CAO, CLA, to evaluate criteria for tax credit or incentive program. And we are conducting those, doing that analysis of various options.
In that context, I would also like to recommend that we request Vtac to evaluate a business tax credit to building owners that allow the exteriors of their buildings to be filmed for free. Number 2, I would like to request that Vtac evaluate a business tax credit to building owners that allow the interior filming for a reasonable cost that Vtac would determine. And number 3, I'd like to instruct the Office of Finance to report to this committee in 30 days on the feasibility and fiscal impact of a sales tax refund for purchases made for filming within the city of LA when at least 75% of the shooting is done in LA.
Okay.
So these are recommendations that we're making to embellish the report.
Okay.
Recommendation number 2.
Council, this was a suspension of the multimedia tax, and the extension of the multimedia zone to downtown LA. The council adopted those actions in August, I believe it was. So that has been resolved.
That's done. Good. Recommendation number 3.
This is a series of recommendations related to utility nodes to facilitate the, in downtown Los Angeles and other areas of the city, have a utility connection to reduce the use of generators, the noise that come with generators, the fumes that come with generators.
Okay, with regard to recommendation number 3, I would like for the committee to approve sending a letter from the council president and chair of this committee to DWP to implement 3 power utility nodes as part of a project. Also include in the letter a request for DWP to provide free parking / base camp use for up to 1 week under DWP power lines. Again, because they are under their own, because they're a proprietary department, we can't direct them, but we can certainly make that a request. And number 3, to return to the committee with a map of these locations. Okay, item number 4. If any of my colleagues has any questions about these items, please let me know.
And
Item
DWP is
recommendation number 4.
Item 4 is to establish.
By the way, I do have a draft letter that I would attach to the motion, but essentially, if council approves that, the letter would go from President Garcetti and myself to DWP, and so he may modify it. That's why I don't want to refer to a specific letter. Okay. Recommendation number 4.
This is to create a downtown film parking task force to address issues related to parking costs, and mobility in downtown Los Angeles. The task force is formed. We've had our first meeting. The next meeting is October 1st.
Okay. So, our recommendation associated with this is to direct the GSD, General Services Department, and Department of Transportation to implement a free parking program except for the cost of security in all available city lots after business hours and during weekends. Department shall report to this committee with assistance from the CLA in 30 days. Also, request Vtac to evaluate a proposal to provide business tax incentives to private parking companies which provide parking to film shoots at a reasonable rate. And number C, it says recommendation 3A. Was that? What's that? Oh, I'm sorry. There was a that has to do with the parking under the DWP wires. That's redundant, actually, so we don't have to.
Let me ask you, who's on the task force?
The Downtown Film Parking Task Force is comprised of business owners in downtown Los Angeles, organizations such as the Downtown Neighborhood Council, CCA, city departments who are involved in downtown Los Angeles, CAO, CLA.
Okay, any representation from CD9 and 14?
It's CD1, CD9, and CD14 are all involved, and they're all participating.
Thank you.
Recommendation number 5.
This is to create a city film city staff gathering park. That number 5 was to collect parking lot data for downtown Los Angeles and to use that data in the downtown parking task force. So we are working with DOT and General Services to gather that data.
Okay, some of the questions we had are relative to what other areas of the city might we have parking, this same parking issue.
Yeah.
And what other areas might have vacant land, for example, San Pedro, Harbor, LAUSD, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. The concern is the film companies need parking immediately adjacent to their shoot. And so it's a matter of working with Film LA to find the areas elsewhere in the city that are most impacted by filming, identify whether there are concerns with parking in those areas. For example, Echo Park has come up recently as an area that has problems. Hollywood comes up in some discussions.
Okay, we would simply request that the task force report back to this committee on recommendations for partnering with other governmental agencies, and I assume Film LA would be a part of that as well. to find additional parking opportunities. Recommendation number 6?
This is to create a citywide film task force. The task force has been formed, has held 3 meetings so far. They've been effective in identifying some problems and finding solutions to those. There have been presentations by the general managers of transportation and recreation parks departments, and we're continuing that. It's both an educational forum as well as a forum to identify problems, identify incentives, and to try and find solutions for those. We need to do a little more active, punch lists of, okay, what's the next thing on the list to hit and find a solution to.
I like that, punch list. We have more recommendations on this than anything else, so let me run through them. This would ask that the council president and myself encourage through a letter all council members to have one person designated from their office who is the film contact. So whether it be working with the task force or whether it be working on whatever the issues may be, that there be one person that everybody identifies in their office. We can only make that as a recommendation, but I think my colleagues will be very friendly to that. Direct the CLA and CAO to collect, distribute, and place on city website a list of each of the city department contacts regarding film. CAO is nodding his head. I take that as concurrent. Great. Direct the CLA and CAO to work with location managers to create a 10 hardest to film in location list. There's got to be a better way to say that. The bottom line, we could call it a hit list of the hardest locations to film, and report to the committee in 30 days with solutions to the identified problems. Direct the CLA and CAO to work with Film LA to develop a process whereby Film LA can manage vacant city property. We mentioned that earlier. 5, direct CLA and CAO to return with a draft ordinance whereby the LAPD can legally enforce properly permitted shoots, including making it illegal to disrupt a properly permitted shoot. I believe that's the one that you said may already
may have been adopted.
May have been adopted by virtue of the special events ordinance.
Yes.
But we do need clarification, so I'm going to continue to keep this in the report. We can always amend it out. Item number 6, direct Recreation and Parks to report back in 30 days on their film policy, including the cost and availability of their spaces, who their film coordinator is, and the discrepancies found between locations, and direct the CLA and CAO to report on recommendations on how to make it easier to film in recreation and parks locations. Okay. Item number 7.
This last item involves creating a website to allow businesses and others to notice that their sites are available for filming, and we need to do some scoping work on that website.
Okay. We would only recommend that we request Film LA, which is currently creating a comprehensive location website, to include on that website a list of city properties, city incentives, contact information, parking and base camp locations, and costs. That would be a work in progress, and I would ask that the CLA and I guess the CAO as well, he's nodding again, so to work with him, especially GSD.
Councilmember Alafant, if
yeah.
you can just clarify.
Please.
The website we're creating is for our client jurisdictions, and I believe this one includes private property that is the recommendation.
Okay.
The California Film Commission currently has sites for private properties and others that we did not want to duplicate and create confusion.
Okay.
So we can talk about how that all would work.
Let's again, that would be a work in progress.
And one of
the
the
idea is to have one location where we can list city stuff. Okay. And then the second part of that would be to direct GSD to return with a comprehensive list of vacant property. The last time we did that, I believe, was in 1996. So I think we need to update that. Those are the recommendations that I, as the chair, would offer. I wanted to take swift action to send a message as well. And so I hope that even though we don't get to some of the core issues, that we're demonstrating an absolute willingness to do a better job of making filming friendly in Los Angeles. With that, I'd like to ask Mr. Parks if he has any questions or answers or recommendations.
No, I think you covered it.
Thank you. Mr. Koretz?
Unless I missed it, one of the ideas that we discussed, but I don't think it was on your list, was trying to find a better way, in addition to avoiding the places that have been problems and trying to direct people to new locations, to find a way to market the concept of filming to city residents. So in the places that have been over-filmed, like mostly my district, frankly, a lot of it on the west side and the valley, and a lot of downtown, to get people to understand the importance of it, and to possibly even work with the locations to find a way to make it more interesting to the residents in the vicinity and let them feel that they're participating rather than just being a nuisance. I think that'll make a significant difference if we can try to put that together as part of the program.
With respect to that, we talked about amending the Film LA contract. So we're going to meet with the CAO, and you're certainly welcome to participate in that meeting if you want to help out.
Okay.
We take all volunteers.
I would be happy to volunteer with that.
Okay, so just if my staff would just make sure that Mr. Koretz is informed when that meeting is going to occur. Okay, then what we do need is a motion to approve the report as recommended for amendment. That motion is made by Mr. Parks, and I concur. So with that, those items are approved. That, in essence, concludes our agenda. We have no public comment cards beyond those who've already spoken. I think this was very productive. If for nobody else, it was definitely productive for me. I know that we're not going to satisfy everybody's request in the short term, but we're hopeful that we develop an action-oriented agenda that is consistent in terms of moving all of these items forward. And over the next year and a half, I think we can be very productive. It's my intent to focus on the issues of film as part and parcel of this committee. In fact, this was not part of the committee last year. So I again want to thank Eric Garcetti for including Film LA as part of the responsibilities of this committee. So with that, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for your participation.